Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Allahumma salli ala Sayyidina Muhammad wa ala alihi wa ashabihi ajma'in. Today's topic is on self-integrity, and I chose this topic because it's one that I find, especially in our times, we can be disconnected from. We have a tendency in our world today to go outward, right? When things are going wrong, and we look for external factors when something doesn't go right in our lives, like, it's being promoted to attach to what is outside of us. And you see this a lot in the Western self-help world. I see this a lot, and part of my work over the years has been filtering Western self-help material through that Islamic framework. And one of the things that I always felt was kind of just unsettling was the focus on other people and like fixating on like having almost like a negative narrative about trauma, a negative narrative about things happening to us. Whereas Islam actually teaches you to look at what Allah's doing for you, how Allah's molding you, what Allah's doing for you, not only in this dunya, but in the akhirah. So we are being programmed more and more in our time to go outward, to blame what is external. I mean, I don't know about you guys, but the amount of videos that I see nowadays about the most entitled people, right? Someone cuts a person off in line, for example, and then someone calls out that person and says, "Hey, you cut the line." That person starts to get mad. Like, how dare you call me out, right? Entitlement is when you literally think that the world and people are there to serve you. And you're entitled to comfort, you're entitled to ease, you're entitled to not being called out. And it's very much related to this feeling of, or this experience of not going inward at all. And you have to catch yourself, because if you don't catch yourself, you fall into that habit. You fall into that habit very quickly, and it starts to become very pervasive in your life, where your go-to reaction to everything is looking for something to blame. Your go-to reaction is looking for who to blame, what to blame. And nowadays, a lot of times people, and I say this with caution because I don't want people to think that I'm minimizing trauma at all. But when entitlement is becoming your go-to like mechanism, you will always go back to, oh, well, I went through that and that's why I'm behaving this way. I went through that and that's why I'm acting this way. And it's not, and I'm not saying it's being done, and I'm not talking about when you do it in a way of like self-accountability, where you're looking to grow, where you're actually making changes. I'm talking about using it as an excuse to continue negative behaviors or mistreating others, or you not, maximizing your potential. So there's a difference between using your trauma as an excuse and using your trauma to self-reflect and really connecting with it to benefit your present. Does that make sense? So I'm seeing a lot of negative, just harmful, honestly, like unhelpful ways that we look at even our own struggles, where they're teaching people that you're like eternally flawed, and you're eternally messed up. That's it. You went through trauma. That's it, and you should always go back and blame that on everything that you go through in the present. And don't get me wrong, trauma does play a role in people's lives. It does. It affects people's present very much so. I'm in trauma work, right? So, I work with people all the time on their trauma. So it does have an effect. But again, I'm talking about a mindset, an attitude, right? Of like, I need to always find something to justify, to make excuses for my behaviors. And then you stay there and you stay stuck there, as opposed to like, how can I fix it? And actually, a lot of people have a hard time getting to that place. Why? Because it's so much more comfortable for the nafs to stay in that mode of like rationalizing, intellectualizing. Oh, anything I go through, oh, it's because this and this and this happened to me. The nafs is like, okay, we figured it out. You give the nafs this illusion that you're working on yourself when you aren't. Because true change is not just knowing the problem. True change is taking steps to fix the problem. It's feeling what you need to feel and doing what you need to do. It's not just knowing. So just giving you examples of how easy it is to go outward or to look for things to blame or to external factors or anything other than your own personal responsibility in the present to justify you continuing in certain actions and behaviors. So self-integrity is really important, because even in trauma work, you need self-integrity. Self-integrity is like, am I being honest with myself about the work? Am I being honest about my feelings? Am I being honest about what happened to me? Am I being honest about, the role that this person played? Or am I being honest about the actual, like, am I taking the steps to make changes? Am I taking steps to heal? So honesty with oneself is so crucial. And I talk about this often, about sidq and, authenticity, and making sure that you're honest with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and you're rooted in his truth, and making sure that you are aware that, as you're engaging in life, he oversees and he is close to you and he sees what you're doing, right? But self-integrity has a lot to do with, you just having that transparency with yourself, that self-accountability. You're always assessing yourself. You're assessing the truth. It's really important, because without it, you'll find a few problems start to happen. You'll find the goals that you have, you're not accomplishing. So you'll find, like, why do I have the same goal? And I've had the same goal for months and for years, and I'm not getting to it. Now, it's very easy, right? It's very easy when people don't accomplish their goals to say, oh, it's because of this. And if only I had the right equipment to, like, let's say fitness, right? If only I had a gym, if only I had this, if only I had that, right? I always use fitness because it's such an easy go-to, and it's something I have experience with as well. So, like, I always draw parallels between, like, when I engage in workouts and my own fitness journey, and and the spiritual and the emotional work. You see a lot of parallels, and you see how, like, we treat the physical work so different than we treat the emotional work. But when it comes to any goal, you always have to assess, like, why am I not achieving it? Why am I always talking about it, but I never get to it? So you'll find that without self-integrity, you will not be achieving your goals. You're not going to maximize your potential. You're not going to heal if you're doing healing work. You are not going to have nourishing relationships, because for you to have nourishing relationships, you have to be honest with yourself, right? So it causes a lot of problems. And those problems are not just individual, they are interpersonal, right? You find that a lack of self-integrity starts to seep its way through so many areas in your life. So goals, relationships, your interactions with others, you just see it, right? And so a lot of times we have to go into that self-evaluation. Now is a perfect time, like, and I don't, I just say that because I know this is the time when people are thinking about the new year and, like, things they want to do. But I want you, instead of putting New Year's resolutions this year, ask yourself, that ongoing joke about that people post every year, where they show their goals for the new year and they just cross out the previous year and it's the same goals. And they just put 2025, right? So what a lot of people don't do, though, is they don't sit and assess why I had these goals and I didn't reach them. I mean, think to yourself, have you done that? Like, have you sat with the goals that you had for this last year and really asked yourself why I haven't achieved them? And then see how easy it is that you go outward. Oh, if only I had this, if only I had the money, you start, like, thinking of all the external reasons. And then I want you to start going inward and say, what did you do? How did you not show up? What were you not honest with yourself about? And you start to get a little uncomfortable because that's not easy for the nafs. The nafs is like, let's just feel good. That doesn't make me feel good. So please, can we go back to feeling good? Go back to telling me that I need to buy something on Amazon to get started for the new year, right? Go back to telling ourselves that if only we had the right support, we would have accomplished our goals. That feels good, right? Feels like, oh, poor me. I just didn't have the right support. And don't get me wrong, that can be a factor. But a person who's truly dedicated to change, that's not the factor they're going to rely on. You can rely on that. You can. It can be a factor. It can be true that, hey, you don't have support. That's valid, right? But if you have a mindset and a heart set of change, that's not going to satisfy you. You're going to be like, okay, and Allah knows that. Allah knows I didn't have the support, but what was in my hands that I didn't do? Because Allah helps those who help themselves. He really does. And Allah helps those who rely on Him for help. So you see, you don't have support, but you show up. You find that He helps you in ways you couldn't even imagine. So we need self-integrity. So first thing, to have self-integrity, you need Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. You need to prioritize Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Why? Because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tells us in the Quran, do not be like those who forgot Allah. He made them forget themselves. This ayah is so important, and it always hits my heart powerfully, because I think of what it means, even on a psychological level, to forget yourself. When we think about abandoning yourself, I've talked about self-abandonment here before, where a person abandons their needs. A person neglects themselves. It's the same thing. When you forget yourself, you neglect yourself, right? So now what's the connection between forgetting Allah and forgetting or neglecting or abandoning yourself? This is the formula. See, throughout the Quran, Allah gives you formulas for success, formulas for a healthy relationship with yourself, formulas for growth, formulas for joy, formulas for happiness. He gives you these formulas, right? We talked about the formula for the enrichment of the heart, right? The hadith that in the previous 2 halakas I mentioned, Allah enriches the heart of, this is in a hadith, the Prophet ﷺ said that when a person's greatest concern is Allah, Allah enriches their heart. And the dunya will start coming to them. So they will find that the dunya starts just like they're no longer, they put Allah first, they're not chasing the dunya starts coming to them. So that's a formula. And the opposite is a formula of what not to do, which is you make the dunya your greatest concern, Allah places poverty between your eyes, nothing is ever enough. You're not rich now, nothing's ever enough. And then what happens? Nothing of the dunya will come to you except that which was written for you, meaning that you're going to get something from the dunya, but it's not going to come to you the same way. So we have formulas. Here's the formula that I want to connect your heart to. Do not be like those who forgot Allah. He made them forget themselves. A lot of people start with themselves. Okay, how can I show up to myself? How can I show up for myself? How can I, not abandon myself? How can I do what serves me? Why am I not sticking to my goals? Why am I not showing up here? Why am I not doing what serves me? And they're totally neglecting where Allah is a priority in their life. So they're forgetting Allah and they're wondering why they're neglecting themselves. So the formula is, you remember Allah, you remember everything that serves you. You forget Allah, you forget everything that serves you. And I'm sure you know this through experience. The days when your prayers are on time and your day revolves around your meetings with Allah, you find yourself connected and showing up to things that serve you. You find yourself wanting to go do that workout. You find yourself wanting to do what benefits you. You find yourself wanting to engage in extra good deeds. You find yourself even wanting to eat healthier. Everything's connected, guys. Really, and I say this because we don't live in compartments. The days in which salah is like an afterthought, the days in which you pray in between everything, meaning that instead of you revolving your day around your prayers, you're trying to revolve your prayers around your day. Those are the days you neglect yourself. You forgot Allah, you forgot yourself. You forgot Allah and what He called you to. You forgot what you need to thrive in this world, because you need prescriptions from the one who created you to thrive. And if you're not thriving, if you're not awakened, if you're not nourished, if you're going through your day on cruise control, you're neglecting the prescriptions that Allah has called you to. So this is a formula that we should always stick to. You find yourself engaging and abandoning the self, what your self needs a lot, assess what is a priority in your life. You'll find that you even start people pleasing less. Really. you prioritize Allah. You see, we don't talk about that often, right? When we talk about people pleasing, we often just forget about the spiritual part. Like we talk about, okay, it's true, you do have to do the psychological work, you do have to do the emotional work, but it shouldn't be separate from the spiritual work. Because there's just this fact that like the more that Allah is your greatest priority, the more you recognize when you're pleasing the people at the expense at, you know, displeasing Allah while pleasing the people. And the more that your priority is to please Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, you find that you don't have the tolerance to displease Allah while pleasing the people. And you actually find yourself more like, you know how like when people work on people pleasing and they start like actually showing up for themselves or doing something that like might risk someone being upset with them. In the beginning, they'll overthink like, oh, I wonder how that person is like felt about my decision. I wonder if they're mad at me. But you know, subhanAllah, you know, when it's done in a way where you're doing it to please Allah, and let's say you know you did something that pleases Allah but displeased someone, you find yourself overthinking less afterwards. Just because you have that connection to the fact that you pleased Allah. And you know He's going to take care of the hearts. Now, it just being able to apply that in other areas is what's crucial. Is like looking for ways to make sure that in what you're doing, you're looking for value with Allah above looking for value with the people. So it frees you in so many ways. Okay, so the first is making sure that you prioritize Allah so you don't forget yourself, so you have that self-integrity. The second is building trust with yourself. You know, we often talk about building trust with others. When we talk about trust, we often talk about it in relation to others, right? We talk about like how horrible it is to break the trust of someone you love, right? We talk about that. What we don't talk enough about is how equally horrible it is to break the trust with yourself. Many people don't even think about that. You know, how many of you have thought about all the ways you break the trust with yourself? That actually is one of the greatest factors that contribute to people not changing, is they break the trust with themselves. And self-integrity has everything to do with, I maintain the trust with myself. And what is trust? Like, what does it mean to maintain trust with ourselves? Well, what does it mean to maintain trust with someone else? You're honest with them. You don't lie to them. When you say something, you do it. When you promise something, you show up. When you tell someone you're going to be there, you're there. It's the same thing with yourself. It's just you flip it and you turn it back on you. When you promise something that you're going to do something, do you do it? When you speak to yourself, are you lying to yourself? Or are you honest? Or you just coddle yourself? Oh no, we didn't do anything. You're fine, you know? Or is it like, no, let's be honest. What role did they play and what role did I play in this situation? Right? So there are so many ways that people break the trust with themselves every day. And then they're wondering, why am I not achieving my goals? Why am I not getting to where I need to be? You're constantly sending the message back to your being that you are not to be trusted. You know, something I found to be really interesting and powerful in my work with helping people get to a certain point, like, you know, let's say, you know, being a facilitator of helping them heal or being a facilitator of helping them achieve certain goals. You know, what's really interesting? The more that a person breaks their trust with themselves, the more anxiety they get about achieving their goal. Has anyone experienced this? Yeah, right? So the more that you break, I'm going to say it again, the more you break your trust with yourself, the more you're going to have anxiety about achieving your goals. The anxiety comes up because there's this worry, this fear that like, are you sure? Like, I don't know, I don't think we're going to get there. This distrust now. And what happens then when that anxiety comes up, they think, oh, I'm anxious. Maybe it's not a good idea for me to go towards my goals. People interpret it differently. And there could be many different reasons why someone might be anxious towards achieving their goals. There could be so many. But I find that this one is a common one. You know how like if someone you love keeps breaking their trust with you. Let's say you have a friend who tells you, don't worry, I'm going to show up to something that's important to you. I'm going to come. Okay. And then they didn't show up. Your graduation came, they didn't show up. And that something else happened for you, they didn't show up. Okay. And then another time they're saying, listen, I'm going to be there. Okay. Wouldn't you get anxious? Wouldn't you be a little like, I don't know. And then the day of the event, and this is someone you really love. Like I see this a lot with people and their parents who were neglectful and didn't show up when important things happen to them. And because those parents broke their trust so many times, they are actually anxious the day of. They're like, I don't know if they're going to show. I don't know. Are they going to show? Do you think they're going to show? People don't realize they have the same anxiety with themselves when they break their trust over and over again. I'm going to start tomorrow. I'm going to start tomorrow. I'm going to tackle that list tomorrow. I'm going to do this. I'm going to do that. I'm going to do this. And then you break it. You don't show up. Oh, I don't feel good today. I'll do it tomorrow. Okay. You just send a message back to your body and your being and your soul that you're not someone who follows through. So remember, you are sending through your actions. In our world today, we focus a lot on what? My feelings drive my actions. And what do I always tell you guys? We talked about it recently.
The opposite, like actions drive feelings.
Actions drive feelings. Yeah. So your actions draw. We often live with this formula that I need to feel a certain way so I could show up a certain way. When actually you show up a certain way, you start feeling differently. You know, if you smile and you're not happy, you send a message back to your brain that you're happy. It's not a coincidence that smiling is a charity. It has an impact not only on you, but on those who encounter it. Someone could be having a bad day and they see your smile and it makes a difference, subhanAllah. Smiling is a charity. This is our faith. You just did a good deed and all you did was move your facial muscles that you weren't even in control of having, like Allah gave them to you. So you're using something Allah gave you to you're utilizing something He gave you and you're getting rewarded for it. But that's also another formula. You show up to what serves you, to what you need to do, you start feeling differently. You wait to feel a certain way, so you show up a certain way, you're going to be stuck for a long time. And this is what's happening to a lot of people now. They are stuck in where they're at because they're waiting to feel something differently. And the emotion is not coming. And sometimes it comes and they do what they need to do and then it stops. And they're like, this is what people say, why? What's wrong with me? Why did I feel it one day and I didn't feel it the other day? You're not supposed to feel it every day. Who told you that you're supposed to feel it every day? This is also a false notion, right? Even in like when we talk about discipline in the self-help world, what do they say about discipline? Discipline is doing what you need to do long after the motivation to do it has passed. That's how they define discipline. So the world has really programmed people, and I say programming because it is programming. It's like, you don't feel good, cut that person off. You don't feel good at work, leave your job. You don't feel, it's like, okay, like, so you just worship your emotions. You just worship what you feel. You're at the mercy of your emotions. Your emotions become your Lord. And so as Muslims, we know, like, this is part of tazkiyah, part of making sure that, when we ask Allah, we seek refuge in Allah from shirk. It's not just I seek refuge from, associating partners with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. No, it's you giving anything a value that only Allah deserves. And a lot of people, guess what they give a value to that only Allah deserves? Their emotions, their feelings. Oh my gosh. Like even in conflict, right? People will say things like, I was watching this video. It was, let me remember. This person was in this person's workplace. I just remember what the woman said. She was he was in his right to be able to be there and videotape, right? And he's like, it's not against the law. And she goes, well, it goes against me feeling comfortable. So you need to step out. And totally normal for her to say that. It goes against my comfort level. And this is why I started with entitlement. You're not entitled to feel good all the time, guys. We're not. A lot of times people, when they start doing this inner work and they start learning how to navigate their emotions, they'll say things like, I was having a good day and then now I don't. I'm not having a good day. And I'll say like, why? What happened? Well, I just feel sad. Like, or I feel grief. The grief came up again. I was having such a good day. And all of a sudden the day becomes bad because a difficult emotion came in. So we treat emotions so unfairly, almost like my life only has the space for feel-good emotions. And if difficult emotions come in, it means there's a problem. It means that it's bad now. We label it as bad. Rather than as it's having something to offer us too. Do you ever feel joy and say, why am I feeling this way? Right? We don't. We're just like, I feel joy. Alhamdulillah, it's awesome, right? They feel great, We need to treat emotions equally and learn. It's a muscle, though, that you build. And it's like you learn to say, well, it's okay that I'm not okay today. Who said I'm entitled to having every single day I feel good? And this is why it's so important to understand the value of not feeling good, that it also has something to offer you. That when you don't feel so good, when you're agitated, that becomes the driving force that propels you towards Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, that propels you towards change. Like, not all anxiety is bad. We think all anxiety is bad. No. Anxiety that drives you towards change is not bad. Not all sadness is bad. Sadness that made you realize what is good for you, what isn't, sadness that took you to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, sadness that made you realize something needs to change is not bad. So we need to stop labeling feel good, good, feel bad, bad. Because then you start becoming like very black and white and very opposite extreme with how you go about your days. You have all or nothing days. And you have your tolerance to hold space for difficulty, for discomfort, for difficult emotions goes lower and lower and lower. And this is a problem. People have such little tolerance now for any agitation, any discomfort. I mean, I know I'm mentioning these videos, but it's not because I'm always on social media. it's because when I go online, that's what comes up now, more than I've ever seen it. It's like someone on an airplane, don't pull your seat back. Someone puts their seat back. No, you're not allowed to. I'm uncomfortable. You can't exercise your right to push your seat back because I'm uncomfortable. And then conflict, right? Conflict for little things. Someone, there's no tolerance to be uncomfortable or agitated anymore. You wait in line more than a few minutes. What's the problem? You start complaining. People's tolerance for just any inconvenience. And this is scary, by the way. And I think why I'm like, I remember these videos is because it makes me wonder as a society where we're headed. That now the scary part is going out into the world with people who are just unhinged, people who are entitled to, you don't know what's going on in their mind, right? Thinking that they're entitled to tell people where to park, where not to park, what not to do, what to do, so they're comfortable. It's crazy. So we shouldn't look at these things and be like, oh, that's them, not me. We should look at these things. How can I catch myself so I don't become programmed to become somebody that's super entitled in my relationships, in society, when I go anywhere, because that's how shaitan works. He chips away at you until you're far gone, right? So I think I went on a tangent there a little bit. I started with self-trust. How did I get here? I know there's a rationale to it, but you just have to figure the trail out. So, breaking trust with yourself, feeling entitled, making sure that you're honest with yourself. Anything I miss?
feelings driving action.
Oh yeah,
Feelings driving
thank you.
action.
Feelings drive, not waiting to feel, going back to the self-trust, right? Like when you want to build trust with yourself, you change the formula. You say, I'm not entitled to always feeling good. I'm going to show up and do what I need to do. So what are you focusing on? You're anchoring yourself in your values. You're anchoring yourself in your needs. You're anchoring yourself in what you know is true, the truth. Meaning what? This is what Allah said I need. This is what Allah said is the truth. I'm going to show up regardless. You know, a value of mine, like for example, people have so many different values. You know how I'll know what your values are? I'll ask you, what do you do every day? That's how you know what your values are. When you value something, you are consistent in it. But if it's not really a value of yours, you're going to abandon it whenever you don't feel good. So for example, if a value of yours is like, treating your body as an aman and making sure you work out, or making sure that you eat healthy, for example, right? It's going to show up, and it's going to show up more consistently. If a value of yours is trust and loyalty, you're going to see that in your actions. Anything that you value should show up in your actions. But the key to that is that when you have a goal, you ask yourself, what is the why behind the goal? What am I trying to achieve here? How is achieving this goal going to help me spiritually, mentally, emotionally, physically, in all areas of my life? And that's what you stay connected to. So that on the days you don't feel good, you anchor yourself in that value. You anchor yourself in that truth. You anchor yourself in what you're trying to achieve. This is why visualization is so powerful. To visualize like what achieving that goal will look like. I often do like visualization with my students, and I'll have them like picture, at the end of them doing this work of transforming their relationship with Allah and with themselves, what does that look like? How does that change the way they show up? How does that change their reactions? How does that change their day? And so get really specific, what do you want to feel? What do you want to, what kind of day do you want to establish in your life? What kind of person do you want to be? And really like visualizing that life for yourself. Visualizing you getting up, praying, tahajjud, and then praying fajr and starting your day. Like visualizing is so powerful, because whatever you visualize, you start like serving the heart. In the home method, I say that the mind is a servant of the heart. So visualization helps activate the heart, because you're using your mind now to serve this heart's connection to what you're trying to achieve. The more you visualize it, the more now you find that you're working towards it. They did this study. I don't know if I mentioned it here before, but they did the study on people who they just had them visualize lifting weights. What do you think happened to these people who just sat there and visualized that they were lifting weights?
They got stronger.
They got stronger. How, right? Like how, it's fascinating. Can you imagine the person in the gym, like who didn't get like the same muscle strength that person?
If you go to the gym and imagine
Oh my gosh, yeah, that'd be doing both. It would be great.
supercharged.
But yeah, that was such a powerful study, because it just shows you. Now I want to just bring it back to like spiritually. We're talking about goals, right? But when you ask any Muslim, what's your greatest goal? What do they say?
Jannah.
My goal is Jannah. It's my goal. What's your goal? Jannah. Like it's right away. But literally it is, right? That's our greatest goal, but we're disconnected from it. Why do you think in the Quran, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gives you so many visual details of Jannah?
So you work towards it.
So you visualize. There's so much imagery details of Jannah. Rivers that flow, the colors, what you get there. In my book, actually, I list a few when I talk about visualization, so you could check it out. I list a few verses that I ask students in the practice section to sit with them, because there's a reason why Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gives us these details of Jannah. Imagine if you sit with the verses of Jannah, okay? Imagine if you sit with the verses of Jannah and you visualize it. I was reading to my nephew this book called Al-Hawd, Meet Me at the Hawd, which is like the pond where we meet the Prophet ﷺ right before you go into Jannah. And I was reading it to my nephew, and it made me tear up because it kept saying, I'll meet you at the house, meet me at the house, right? And it started creating this like imagery that like you have this meeting with the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and where you're given a drink, and once he gives you this drink, you're never thirsty again, which really bothered my nephew, by the way. He was like, I don't ever not want to be thirsty, because he loves water. Yeah, mashallah. Bismillah, mashallah. Like mashallah male, he always loved water. I love that. That's like his go-to drink. So, but that really bothered him. He was like, I want to be thirsty. And he kept mentioning it. I was like, okay, well, you can have water in Jannah. You could ask for it. but it just, it made me emotional, because the more you actually like sit and imagine it, the more it awakens your heart, and it becomes real in your heart. And this also includes like you sitting with the verses where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala talks about you meeting him, the day of judgment, the all the teachings that we know about what happens that day, and the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam interceding for us, and so many details. And a lot of times people don't want to, because some of it is like, it's not like, I'm not talking about just Jannah, right? I'm talking about also the harsh realities. And sometimes we don't want to even connect to that. But part of Iman is connecting to that as well. Why do you think that the Prophet ﷺ, when he would get up for tahajjud, he would affirm all that is true? It's a long dua, but his dua is like, just parts of it is like, oh Allah, you are the truth, and your message is true, and your prophets are true, and the Quran is true, and Jannah is true, and hell is true. Nowadays, people are like, Jannah is true and hell is true. It's like, we don't want to like connect to those aspects. But the more you learn about that reality, the more your heart is ignited with Iman, and the more that world becomes more of a reality for you than this world. So again, it goes back to the hadith we mentioned in the beginning. That becomes your greatest concern, the akhirah. And you find that Allah enriches your heart. And you find that the dunya you put second now starts to come to you in ways that you didn't even imagine, because that becomes your greatest priority. But visualization is really important when it comes to your goals. And then so that helps you with self-integrity, because on the days you don't feel good, your heart is connected to what? What am I trying to achieve? It's the same thing with Jannah, like with your acts of worship. The more that Jannah is a reality in your heart, the more you're going to show up to worship and to do what Allah commanded you to, even if you don't feel it. Then it becomes that claim of Jannah as my goal becomes a reality. So you're not worshiping your emotions, you're worshiping Allah, and your heart is connected to the goal that you're trying to achieve. Self-integrity. To have self-integrity, you have to have shukr. And I say that because self-integrity is about being honest with yourself. It's about knowing your limitations. It's about knowing you're not self-made. Nobody's self-made. That you are a product of those who came before you and those who invested in you. So a person who has self-integrity, who's rooted in truth, has shukr. The Prophet ﷺ, he said, those who do not thank the people, which have gratitude or appreciation towards the people, do not have appreciation or shukr towards Allah. So a person with integrity, you will find that they are thankful to those who they benefited from. And you see this in the companions. You see this in the way, even the chain of knowledge, right? You see this. They were grateful to anyone who taught them something. And when you have shukr, this is why they say there's a difference between imitation and inspiration. You guys heard that? Like there's a thin line between imitation and inspiration, where you know what the difference is? People who like watch other people, they call them the monitoring. I heard it's called the monitoring spirits, apparently. It's a new term I just learned. But basically to describe people who like watch what other people are doing and copy them. And like, you know, the difference between someone who copies and someone who's inspired by someone is that a person who copies doesn't thank or give credit or address where they got their information, their knowledge, or where they got that idea from. A person who is inspired shows shukr. I was inspired by this person and I got this idea from this person and I'm thankful to this person who taught me this, or it comes from the heart. Imitation comes from the nafs. Inspiration comes from the heart. You have shukr, you have gratitude. You understand the nafs it's from me. Wants to copy and what? It's from me. It's my idea. And you see this in a lot in our world, especially in the online world where people are just like trying to get ahead or trying to just do whatever it takes, compromising their values, right? To be trendy or what, so many examples I can give. But we have to be careful. Self-integrity means, why am I doing this? It's showing shukr, showing gratitude, and above all to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and remembering that the source of everything you have is Allah. And that's what protects you from arrogance. It's not just about me getting ahead. It's not just about me proving that look, this is all from me. No, I know nothing. It's from Allah. Self-integrity is that you're honest about what you know and you don't know. This is important for our times. Reviving the power of I don't know. Reviving the usage of I don't know. We live in a time where we're seeing more and more people are ignorant, claiming they know. And more people, subhanAllah, who have knowledge, claiming that they don't know. And this is something that, we were taught about in our faith. Omar ibn al-Khattab, radiallahu anhu, he says that whoever says, oh, I'm a person of knowledge, then just know that he's truly ignorant. And you see this. You see the people who have big claims, I'm an expert in this, and I am this, and I am this. They usually don't have a lot of like the actual training to back it up, the actual experience to back it up. I see this, and subhanAllah, the more that you actually learn, the more that you just get scared to claim that you know. Like, subhanAllah, I've been in this field for over a decade, right? And I still cannot claim to heal people's trauma. And then I see people, no clinical training, I claim to heal your trauma. I get scared for them. I'm like, why are you claiming that? And then when I look into it, a lot of them don't have actual clinical training, because when you get trained in something, this applies to any field, right? The more you know, the more it humbles you. And the more you're like, I don't know, and I have more to learn, and you need supervision. You can't be, and this is why I tell people, because unfortunately we are living in a time where people are slapping on titles to themselves on social media, and this causes harm. They weren't trained, they weren't supervised. Nobody oversaw how they were helping people heal. This is a problem. And unfortunately, we see it in the Muslim community. You get lost in this culture of, I need to put a title, and people are slapping on titles to their names before they've even done the work, claiming to do things that they're not qualified to do. That's an amana. It's an amana. And I see this more in spiritual and mental health more than it is in physical healing. Can you imagine you go to a surgeon and you don't find out if they're actually trained? But for some reason, people don't ask, when they go to someone who calls themselves for example, a trauma coach, or or I'm going to help you heal trauma or something. They don't ask okay, how did you get to this? Where did you learn? Or almost people don't feel like they should ask, because it's not as important as physical health. But it is. It's really important. You're going to somebody who's claiming to help you with your inner world. That's sacred. Are they trained for it? Do they understand the amana that it is to help you with that? So I'm just speaking from the perspective of my field, but you can apply this to any field, where people claiming to call themselves scholars when they're not, people claiming to say that they're experts in something when they're not, right? And this really speaks to a disconnect from that self-integrity. Because when you look in our tradition, you see the opposite. We have this amazing story of Imam Malik. You guys know the story of Imam Malik and I don't know? This is a powerful story in our tradition, where there was this man who, he was going to go visit Imam Malik, and he was going to travel many, many miles to go visit Imam Malik, rahimahullah. And he collected 40 questions from his village, because everyone, they had this respect for ilm. See, knowledge was sought out for what it was, not to get ahead, not to monetize, but to actually change your own heart. And this is what we need to revive in our time. So he collected these questions from his village, 40 questions, and he took them, traveled miles and miles. And at that time, it's so much hardship to travel, much more than we have today. Knowledge was not at the tip of their fingers, so they had more value and respect for it. And all these people that gave their questions are waiting now, like, for the answers. Like, look at that connection. They're going to value it when it comes back to them. So this man, he goes all the way to Imam Malik and he asks him the 40 questions. How many questions do you think Imam Malik answered?
0.
He said, I don't know, to 36 questions. I don't know. This is the biggest scholar of his time. You know, when people nowadays, people, when they have platforms, they feel like I should always show that I know. That's lack self-integrity. And you're going to answer to Allah about that. Because when you answer something that goes beyond your qualifications, you can cause harm. And that's a form of, abuse we don't talk about, right? When you give the impression, especially in, when you're in a position of power or you have a platform, you give people the perception that you're qualified to help them with something when you aren't. So he said, I don't know, to 36 questions. And the man was surprised. And he asked Imam Malik, what should I tell the people about these 36 questions? For which you said, I don't know. And Imam Malik, he replied that the man should tell the people that Imam Malik says, I don't know, I don't know, I don't know. Tell them what I said. But that's how much people, first of all, respected truth. And they understood what an amana it is, to say something beyond your knowledge, what a trust it is in front of Allah. And that's also someone, you want to talk about someone who doesn't people please? Like, we have these giants in our tradition who taught us the importance of pleasing Allah, of pleasing the people. Tell them, I don't know. We need to normalize this. We need to normalize in our society saying, I don't know, saying, hey, that goes beyond the scope of my training. I know somebody who is qualified in this, or just being okay with you not showing that you're an expert in whatever they want you to be an expert in, right? And that requires the sense of, like, it's okay that I don't know everything. I'm not meant to know everything. But at least you get to sleep at night knowing that you did not present an image that was false, and you were staying anchored in what is true about you. And that's what creates that self-integrity. You're honest with yourself. All right, I know we're over the time, so I will stop here. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, help us, increase in our self-integrity and our taqwa, essentially, which is that consciousness of Him. Inshallah. Allahumma salli ala Sayyidina Muhammad wa ala alihi wa ashabihi ajma'in.